Good morning. My name is Rob Mattern, and welcome to our Mattern Coffee Break, where we are going to discuss the future of administrative support. With approximately 58% of traditional legal secretaries looking to retire from the workforce in the next 5 years and a lack of talent in the pipeline, how are firms going to address this critical issue? Give you some background here. Mattern are unbiased consultants for law firms, administrative services, office services, records and information governance. We assist firms in assessing and benchmarking their administrative services, secretarial support, back office, word processing, billing, and help them develop a strategy moving forward to shift tasks away from resources that have more important things to do or at a higher billing rate, and shift those functions to the right people with the right skill set getting paid the correct amount of money. I would like to welcome here today Bill Mech, who is the developer of Revelation Legal, and Cory Riner, who is a Mattern Consultant and our administrative expert. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic. Got my coffee. I'm all ready for our coffee break.
Okay. This is going to be a live one. Before we get started, I'm just going to talk about a little bit about some housekeeping rules. One, keep yourself on mute unless you like to speak. In that case, obviously take yourself off mute and introduce yourself and ask a question. You can also submit questions through chat, and we will work them in throughout the discussion today. And if you're not speaking, make sure you do keep yourself on mute in order to cut down background noise. Most important thing about administrative services, and we get asked by a multitude of firms this question, say, hey, listen, what's the right solution? Do I keep it in-house? Do I outsource it? What functions do I try to centralize? Should it be on-site, off-site, whatever? And I think the most important thing to keep in mind here, and what we're going to illustrate, is there is no right solution that's rubber stamped across every law firm. Law has to depend upon your culture, whether you've outsourced in the past, whether you feel the need to have those services close, location-wise to you. What are the future growth plans for the firm? Okay, what's the mentality towards having outside employees, even though they're under non-disclosures and confidentiality agreements, something like that, looking at your work? So there's a multitude of factors that go into it. Geographic regions have a lot to do with it, especially on the pay scale. So there's, again, no correct answer. We have a framework that takes all that into account, tied in with Revelation Legal, and the analysis and the assessment on the back end that really factors all those in and presents to you an array of possible solutions to solve those problems. So before we begin, in terms of our presentation, we're going to hit you with a polling question about this upcoming shortage of administrative staff over the next 5 years, and just try to get a feel where firms are at in addressing that. We'll give you a couple 20 seconds to fill this out, and then we'll display the results.
Looks like we have about 50% submitted, so I'll give everyone about 10 more seconds and then I'll share the results.
Okay, great. Okay.
Here you go.
Okay, it's biggest answer there. Topic of discussion, about half. We're aware of the issue, haven't addressed it, 21%. Some firms haven't addressed it at all, and other ones are, about 20% are take it as a critical initiative. Okay, Bill, Cory, any comments on the results? Anything we didn't expect there?
Yeah, this is pretty much what I would have expected. I think it's you know, it's a rare firm that this isn't really on their radar. I would guess probably smaller firms with a more stable history, you know, of employees. Maybe this hasn't sort of risen to the surface. I have a sneaky suspicion of the nose, that even though maybe it's not on their radar today, they're going to migrate up this spectrum here, within the next, you know, 5 or 6 years, as these issues kind of become real in their firms.
Yeah, and some of those no's have likely started to make some progress into a centralized model, or kind of segmented off some of those LAA tasks to different departments.
Yeah, re-engineering some of those roles.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to handle this in a little different way today. Typically, we walk through process and show you all the steps involved, and then show you what the end results are. We're going to start with the end results and show you exactly what Mattern presents to a firm in regards to, after the analysis that we do, tying in Revelation Legal, and then we're going to walk you through Revelation Legal. But we're going to show you exactly the end results, that how we tee the ball up so the firm can start making some decisions. And this is all part of our initial analysis in phase 1, we call it, on which way they want to go. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Cory.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
Rob, before you do that, I just had a question for you. Do you
Phil,
find
you're not allowed to ask me
this
questions.
is you said
It's only
this-
for the audience.
So here we go. And this is unscripted, folks, by the way. So do you find that firms either are seeking or end up developing kind of a single global kind of a strategic plan, or is it really more a series of smaller initiatives that, you know, maybe come together over time? I mean, so is it like a big thing, or is it lots of little things, as I'm wondering?
That's a great question. I would say it's a combination. I'll be honest with you. You know, we get hired by firms to do this assessment and kind of tee that ball up as a grand global initiative. There are firms that have piecemeal it. And I'm not saying that one way is the best way, but firms are definitely waking up to this upcoming issue of that decreasing available talent pool, and some are just hopping on board and let's establish a global initiative. I think it depends upon the size of the firm, has something to do with it. Okay, the larger firms tend to go with a global. Smaller firms could be piecemeal, but again, there's no right answer in terms of how you address this. I think as long as you are addressing.
So maybe, yeah, you know, that kind of makes sense because you want to minimize the disruption of the data collection part, right? So you do that in a big way, and then you implement it kind of slower and more strategically over time. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and it depends. If the firm's already outsourced certain processes and they're used to that, you know, again, they could be a little bit more aggressive there. Or you know, some firms just want to dip their toe into it to see, hey, does this work if I just outsource document processing, which is really usually a pretty good place to start. Do I just take it a step by step and make sure, one, I have the right partner, okay, make sure it's working, make sure the attorneys accept it, you know, get all the bugs worked out, because there will be bugs. There's going to be bumps in the road, no doubt about it. But that's a great approach. Yeah. So, Cory, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's right. A lot of firms, if they're not all in on outsourcing already, if they do outsource, they want to do it piece by piece. They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket and risk anything going wrong. And the same as if they're creating new departments in-house, they don't want to get too much on their plate all at once. They like to gradually ease their legal staff into the new way of doing things. And it really depends on firms. Some firms like to go all in and kind of just do it all at once, and some firms like to ease in.
Yeah. Again, no right answer. We've done it both ways. How I tell you, the only thing we do say, if you're looking at this outsourcing path, if you decide to do it, and you don't have to, you know, Fox Rothschild is one of our clients. They haven't outsourced their administration. That's all in-house. Is to once you go down that outsourcing road, it's difficult to go back. So let's make sure, you know, you have a strong contract in place and all the pieces are in place to make sure it works. Because again, once you outsource people, it's tough to bring them back. So, okay, Cory, why don't you show us what we deliver? And this is just one small part. What we deliver to the firm after we do, again, our utilize Revelation Legal, gather all the information, do all our analysis, do our focus groups, interviews, workflow analysis. What did they get?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Rob. So this is a very small piece of the report and what we produce to the firm. Generally, these reports run about 100 pages, so there is a lot more information than what we're showing here. But generally, firms do like to focus in on realized savings. So this is an example from one of our recent projects where we identified through Revelation Legal, through those focus groups, through interviews, through other data collection, tasks that could be moved to different resources, lower cost resources, because the tasks were basic data entry or more highly specialized in like document processing, which is the chart on the bottom here. So on the top chart, we identified about 27,000 basic administrative hours through Revelation Legal and other data gathering that didn't really need to be with someone that maybe has 20 years of legal experience. It was entering expenses into Chrome River or things like that, that with a little bit of training on the software, that you could find a large area to recruit from that could handle those tasks. So with that movement, we were able to realize about $500,000 in savings, or about 38 to 41% savings. And every firm's different. So that 14 FTEs that we show moving may be smaller or larger depending on the size of your firm and how those tasks are distributed. And then on the bottom chart, this was a firm that had a small document processing group, but a lot of those tasks still were handled by LAs, and we identified about 18,000 hours. And again, in both of these charts, it was a very conservative approach by Mattern, based on the firm's guidance that they didn't want to risk having them understaffed, but in a lot of cases that there are reductions that can be made because LAs they're kind of a jack of all trades. So they're not specifically trained to do document processing work. So if you have someone that's doing that every day, they're going to do it a little faster. So there's going to be more efficiencies gained there. So we did do a like for like model here. And with the document processing group, similar to the administrative services group, we identified 12 positions that could be moved over, saving the firm about $200,000 if they do it in-house, and about $400,000 if they do it outsourced, which is about 18 to 32% total savings. So the percentage is transferable to a lot of whether it's a larger firm or smaller firm, but in this case, those were the ranges.
So Cory, just to kind of look at this a different way. So these savings, which, as you said, this was a real project, wasn't maybe the largest of projects, but it was a good project. This was without any actual reductions of positions, because at the firm's request.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
These are just efficiencies that you guys found. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
And we did run a model with our recommended headcount for each area, which only increased the savings. We thought they were, overstaffed, and we moved this out. We could get by because you got people, more focused on it, better trained, something like that. So
that's a pretty good result for a conservative approach. That's the point I was trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And generally there are a lot of reductions because in LAA they're getting disrupted every few minutes with a new task, and a document processor or an administrative specialist is handling items in a queue and only handling those tasks, so they're not having those disruptions of having to make a phone call or answer emails.
Yeah. Again, as Cory mentioned, our report is pretty voluminous, but this tends to be the slide or the pages that the management committee is focused on. So, okay, so that's the end result. We're going to show you how we get there and the process that we utilize. But before we do that, we're going to do one more polling question. Brooke, if you could launch the next one. Okay, does your firm have a full understanding of what tasks your administrative staff is doing? This is $1 million question.
Give everybody about 10 more seconds. We got 60%. If you could just submit your answers, that'd be great. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and share the results.
Okay, 36% fully on top of it. Excellent. Okay. Somewhat work in progress makes up the remaining almost 60%. So, okay. Pretty much what we see in the industry. If you're currently using a workflow tool like Big Hand or something along those lines, you tend to have know what's going on. You don't necessarily know how much time it's taking, but you know what's being done. But that 60% is really why, and we utilize Revelation Legal. Bill's going to start walking through how we deploy this in firms to gather that information of what people are doing. And this applies to both attorneys, if we want to roll out to them, and administrative staff, what they do all day.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to just sort of introduce you quickly to Revelation Legal, but before I show you what it looks like, Rob asked me to give you a little bit of history. You know, obviously I've been in legal management for a long time, and while any sort of departmental manager will tell you, you know, when you ask them the question, do you have a pretty firm grasp on what your team is doing all day, they're almost always going to answer the question yes. Now, if you ask them to prove it, might be a little different result, because in truth, right, the truth is that we have an understanding, we have a general understanding, but when you really want to understand in detail and see the tasks people perform so that you can develop alternative approaches, you really have to move away from the world of supposition and conjecture and have data, have something that you can actually grab onto and work with. And as a manager, I realized that a long time ago that we had a general understanding, but we didn't really know enough to do a good job with the re-engineering effort, call it, or reallocating of responsibilities and so forth. Not even getting into, are they productive or are they doing the right things? We before you answer those questions, we had to start with the basic question, which was, well, what are they doing? I mean, we're paying them for all these hours. They're working full time. What are they being asked to do? And in the case of legal secretaries or LAAs, it's even harder to quantify, right? Because in the real world, every one of their jobs is different. The practices they work for are different. The attorneys they work for are different. The locations around the country might be different. And so literally every one of their roles is different. And so if you try to sort of over homogenize that result, you're gonna miss things. There's gonna be things left on the table. So Revelation Legal was specifically designed to answer that question. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, in keeping with our theme today, is we're going to show you the end first. And you can all let us know if you like this approach. So this is the Revelation Legal screen. This is one of the two primary reports you get out of the process. It's essentially a survey that we administer to whoever is going to participate in the process, but it can be the entire firm or it can be a subset. Could be just staff, for example. But this is an example of what we received from this is a capital market secretary. I think they were based in New York. Yeah, here you go. The location's New York. The firm provides us a little bit of demographic information about the role, and then we administer a questionnaire to everybody. The results of the questionnaire allow us to build this profile. So any of you who've ever been involved with a job analysis process in HR, this is that process, much more efficient and on steroids. And as you can see, this is what we call the individual report. Here's the demographic information. And this gives you a high-level overview of what this person spends their time on. A little more detail down in this section here, but then at the bottom, it gets real fun. And again, we're starting you at the end, so I'll show you how we get this in a minute. But you can see, we basically answer 3 simple questions. What do people do all day? How much of it do they do? And based on their actual compensation, what does it cost us to have them do it? And so just using this secretary as an example, they spend 14% of their time, or 246 hours a year, on processing mail, and it's costing you $14,000 a year at this individual level. So this is a lot of detail, as you can see, at the individual level. And this is important sort of as you go to implement changes at the firm, right? Because you have to understand, if you're going to change this person's job, you need to have this information at your disposal in order to effectively change it. However, to sort of look for opportunities or develop an approach, you need to look at this data in a more compiled way. And so that leads us to the second report. This is called, aptly, the compilation report. And this is basically where we take all of the individual reports, all of that data, and we roll it into a single view. And so and this is where, instead of looking at the individual, we're looking at the activities that people perform. So I'm going to select support activities, since that's our focus today. And you can see the level of detail. So this is already showing us, of all the people who filled out the questionnaire, we can see how many total hours are spent in each of these categories of activity, the value of those hours based on their actual compensation, and so forth. So we've basically answered those 3 questions again. What do they do? How much of it do they do? And what does it cost us? Now, the fun thing about Revelation Legal is it gives you this interface to do this very powerful analysis that Mattern takes full advantage of. So as I click on this, we simply drill down into more and more detail. So administrative activities fall into these categories here: word processing, meetings, travel, facilities management, so forth, docketing, court reporting. And again, as we drill in, we can see all this detail. And so now, again, this is all of that individual responses boiled into this global view of your firm. And so one of the ways I like to refer to this is having X-ray vision into your firm, because as a whole, I can now see who's performing these, how much of these tasks are being performed, 52,000 hours in this particular case, worth $2.1 million at an average hourly cost of $41 an hour. So this is how we, and when Rob will talk about this in a little bit, but this is basically how we sift out the needles from the haystack. So where do we want to seek efficiencies? Well, this tells us, right? This tells us where we're spending the most time, so that we focus, either redevelopment efforts or training efforts or outsourcing efforts on the activities that are going to deliver the biggest bang for your buck. And you can see the level of detail that Revelation Legal provides you. Okay. And again, this is all built off of that individual report, which gives you, in essence, a job analysis for each person. Any questions at this point, Rob, or should I show them the survey?
I'd say why don't you show them the survey?
So we wanted to give you a quick glimpse at how this is built. And the way we did that is by, pardon me, my Zoom is helping me here. Okay. So this is just a snippet of the survey, but we wanted to just show you how it works, because we all know in our environments, in law firms and in legal settings in general, it's really hard to get people to give us good information about what they do all day. They either may not want to show it to us, or in some cases they may not even know the answer. So I mean, it's a fair concern, right? Because if you pick a secretary and say, tell me how many hours a year you spend processing mail versus doing anything else, they can't answer that question, right? Because we don't think that way. We don't track our time in that level of detail. The Revelation Legal Questionnaire has been designed over many years and many of these projects and been refined. That's what this is designed to do. It basically gives us an answer that the employee themselves can't provide us. And the way we do that is we ask them questions in series of layers. The taxonomy of activities is built in, it's a hierarchical structure, right? And so what we do at each layer is we say, tell us how you allocate all of your time across these activities. And they can simply, and all they have to do is it has to total 100% because they're describing their entire role, but they're talking about their job, right? So they know. So they have to be the best place to get the answer. And so all they have to do is, by using this very easy slide bar, we had to make it easy, right? Easy and quick, is they can tell us, and by percentages, where they allocate their time. And it's very simple when they're filling this out. They simply say, I do a lot of this, or I do a very little bit, or I do none of it at all. And after they give us these answers, I'm going to simplify this for our demo. After they give us their answer and it totals 100%, they're allowed to continue to the next page. And the next page simply takes the responses and zooms down to another layer of detail. And again, they don't need to know how many hours they're allocating. They're just telling us, do you do any of these activities? And if you do you do a lot of it, or do you do a little of it? And they have to basically describe their entire job, right? Because it has to be 100%. And so it's very intuitive and it's very quick, which is the key. Simple jobs like a mail clerk, 10 minutes, and they're in the survey and they're done. Jobs that have more complexity to them, they simply are going to see more screens, so it takes them a little longer. So it might take 20 to 30 minutes. But that's it. Once they fill this out and hit continue, and they only see screens that apply to them. And again, they either do it a lot or a little or none at all, and they're done. And that allows us, just to circle back real quick, to build this very unique profile. Where's my nice sample here? Our legal secretary. It allows you to build this profile in this level of detail and then compile it into a more powerful view.
Okay, Bill, just to interject, a couple questions are coming through, and you already addressed one, but I think we just want to take it one step further, is how long does this survey, for lack of a better term, take? And, you mentioned 20 to 30 minutes. Again, it depends upon how focused the job is, but a lot of, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of people have a wide array of tasks that they're doing.
Right.
Then it takes a little bit longer, possibly 30 minutes or so.
Right.
Is that accurate?
So yeah, that's right. So on average, probably it's in the 15 to 20 minute range. But the point is in order to get this information, you either do this approach, which is as efficient as we're talking about, or you do something else, right? And if anybody who's in HR and who's had to build job analysis, it requires interviews, refinement of that feedback, probably follow-up questions, more refinement. And even after all of that, you still have nothing that's this precise. And this, again, comes right from the employee.
And
Okay.
speaking to that, we actually, in one of our projects, had a client who had a pretty high level administrative position coming open. That person was retiring, and they actually added that person to Revelation Legal, wanted this data in order to create that job analysis and create the job description to hire that person.
Wanted to point to a question came through. Do you administer this to everyone in the firm or just the administrative staff? And I'll let you answer that, Bill.
Yeah, so the short answer is we can do whatever you want, right? If you want to focus your analysis on a particular department or job function, we can do that. And you get all this, right? You get this powerful insight. However, one of the realities of our world, the legal profession, legal administrative profession, is that all the roles, if you think about all the roles in a law firm, including all the attorneys, legal assistants, paralegals, and so forth, all the administrative staff, the roles, while we might make organizational charts and we create job descriptions, in reality, they don't fit into those little boxes. They just don't, right? So just the blatant example of that is our attorneys. We talk all at law firms, we have all kinds of systems that analyze and track their legal activities. Why? Because we bill for those and they're worth dollars to us. But what we don't track is their non-legal activities, their administrative activities. And there's been many studies out there that show that it could be anywhere from 20 to 40% of all of their time, right, that they spend working for the firm is spent on those activities, and yet we don't know anything about them. So the long answer to the question, Rob, is the best way to use this is to include everyone, right, so that when you look at the compilation report and say document processing, you're seeing all the lawyers capturing their non-billable time, organizing files, all of that dead time that lawyers spend is all captured in there. And the way it looks, you can see these blue bars here. These happen to be timekeepers. So I'm just going to click on one, and this is unscripted, so I apologize. Let's see what it comes up with. All right, so this happens to be a partner who is based in New York, and you can see how much legal and non-legal time that they spend. And look at all this activity. But we don't know that until they do the Revelation Legal Survey. So now it probably, in honesty, probably took this attorney maybe 35 minutes to do their survey because it's so detailed. But look what you get. If you can, right, once we get them to do that, look at this detail. We have not only their legal activities broken down by task code, by the way, the leads task codes are built into the system here, but you have all of their non-legal time, their administrative time. And you can see, again, based on their actual compensation, how many hours they spend doing it and what it's costing the firm to have them do it. So this lawyer, of their total comp, $323,000 a year is being devoted to administrative activities.
Yeah, and just be clear, we're not going to make that disappear entirely. However, what we want to do is take as much as we can away from them and give it to the dedicated department. So shift it from and a matter of fact, we did this analysis as part of the project we were showing you earlier. Take those non-billable tasks, what we can, shift it to a dedicated department. And what would it mean if the partner was able to bill those hours? What type of additional revenue he would generate? So that's kind of a tangent off of our typical analysis, but it's substantial. So, okay, Bill, anything else you want to show in regards to Revelation Legal?
Nope, not unless there's more questions. Just wanted to give.
Okay, is it customizable?
The short answer is no. And that's because the taxonomy, as I've mentioned, it's been refined over time, and we do update it all the time and work on it, but changing a taxonomy structure is not a casual activity. You have to spend a lot of time understanding taxonomies before you can change the structure. So the core structure, no, we don't change that too often. It does happen on occasion. What we do, however, is we customize it to the nomenclature of the firm. And we do that with every project. So just as a good example is always the terms word processing versus document processing. If a firm doesn't use the term word processing, they only use document processing. If they see word processing in the questionnaire, it's gonna confuse people. And so we go through that and we identify with the firm which terminology might be, ambiguous to their employees, and we clarify. And we make those updates with every project.
Yeah. Okay. So we started with the end, which Cory showed you. Bill showed you how we gather a lot of this information in what we believe is a very efficient, effective way of actually going to the staff and asking them. We then gather all that information. We take Revelation Legal, and then we do our assessment and benchmarks. Cory, why don't you pick up on that and show, or just highlight, because we only got about 5 minutes left here, 8 minutes left, and show how we do our analysis.
Yeah, so for our analysis, Revelation Legal is a critical piece. We don't use it for every project, but the projects we do use it in, our report is definitely much stronger, and we have that quantitative data to show rather than what we typically gather from the firm. If the firm gathers metrics, we definitely include that in our analysis. We conduct, as Rob alluded to earlier, on-site or remote interviews and focus groups. And those, I would say those are a critical piece, even if you're doing Revelation Legal. The on-site or remote interviews and focus groups are critical just to get context around the tasks. Revelation Legal helps inform the questions that we ask. If you go into one of those interviews blind, usually you're going to hear about the most annoying task that person does on a daily basis, whether that's the bulk of their time or an hour of their month. That's what they're going to focus on because that's what they want to see improved. But having that Revelation Legal data lets us know going in what to ask about, whether it's spending a lot of time on time entry or expense reporting or document processing. We can focus in on that, look at those processes that go into place, the workflows in place there, see where issues may lie, and from there craft recommendations, best practices regarding your workflows, processes. If something is split up between an LAA does this, a paralegal does this, a billing assistant does this part of this process, we can provide recommendations on streamlining that process. But in addition to that benefit of those focus groups and interviews, it also lets your staff provide feedback to us. It lets them guide the process, makes them feel as if they're part of this change that may be coming their way, that it helps with their buy-in. We're hearing their feedback, incorporating that into the recommendations rather than using a set of data. While you may be able to create some workable recommendations from that hard data, it is definitely important to get their personalized feedback from their experience in order to round that out. And then with the combination of those processes, that feedback we get from discussions, Revelation Legal, Mattern creates that mammoth of a consultation report, and we'll include best practices, feedback from what your staff are feeling today, what they're spending their time on. We'll provide in-house and outsourced solutions depending on, and that really is firm culture driven, all of those recommendations. We're not gonna, if your firm, everyone we talk to says, I can't imagine this being outsourced, I would leave the firm in a heartbeat if they decided to outsource my LAA, then we're not going to recommend that. We're going to recommend things that we feel are going to work for your firm, enhance your efficiency, and improve the lives of your staff. And then we'll also look at the financial impact, like on the slide we showed at the beginning of this presentation, to show you savings that you could realize with either of those options.
Okay. Okay, couple questions. We got a couple minutes left, and then we'll do a wrap up. How much time per employee is spent on the focus groups? So how did tell Corey how we structure those?
Generally, we like to look at not only each position, so we like to get LAs, project assistants, paralegals, attorneys, partners in individual focus groups, 3 to 4 participants per group. But we also like to separate those out by practice group because litigation attorneys probably have a different experience than transactional attorneys. But usually the office administrator in each office that we look at has a good idea of those who have opinions, who would like to speak with with us as we're working through the process. And generally those take about an hour for each group.
Okay, so focus groups, we do an hour and we spread them out through set number of days, set up all up in advance. If someone's key is not there, we do a follow-up one-on-one interview. So how long does a process take? I'm going to jump in and answer this. What you're looking at, that final report, that one slide from the final report, is what we call phase one, where we come in and do an unbiased assessment, tee up the ball for outsourcing, improving the house, what should be done, and really a blueprint. You can take that blueprint and run with it, or you can hire Mattern to implement that blueprint, build that house. The first part, phase one, I tell you, generally from, depending upon the size of the firm, how many offices we have to go to and so on like that, I would say like 13 to 16 weeks is a good range, okay? Again, it depends upon the time of the year and something like that, but generally, we shoot for wrapping up a report in 1 quarter. The phase two, depending upon what we're doing. We're improving in-house. That could be over a course of a year with training and so on like that. With outsourcing RFP, if you're going to outsource some of these functions, you're talking 4 to 6 months. Okay, so that's how long. And then we also stay involved if you want us to, after the contract's in place, monitoring what's going on. So I see. Okay, the other questions I will get back to you on, but just kind of summarize this whole coffee break here is, again, the $1 million question, which we think Revelation Legal does a terrific job in answering, is what are the people doing all day? And again, not from a negative sense, but more, what are they doing from a task-wise that we could take a look at and take some of those functions away from them to free them up to do a higher level tasks, more important, and put them with a more cost-effective solution that typically will do a better job because they're skilled in those areas. That's what Revelation Legal provides. And then along with their analysis, again, everything else that Corey just talked about, we're able to really answer that question. What are they doing? What is it costing us? Is there a more efficient way to do it? And again, as we already talked about, there's an in-house way to do it, and there's an outsourced. Depends upon the firm. We'll tee up both balls for you. So we're about out of time here. Any closing comments, Bill, Corey, you want to make?
No, thanks for the opportunity. You know, I guess the one point I would just, sort of drive home is that this is, this is a big problem. We've been talking about it a long time in law firms, this sort of changing support model. I mean, we've talked about it in different ways, right? Where the role is changing, or in sort of in keeping with the theme of this particular coffee break, was these people are literally going away. I mean, they're leaving these firms, whether we're prepared for it or not. And yeah, there'll be some of the senior folks who will hang on, but there's plenty who won't. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to be really kind of caught. So you definitely want to invest some time thinking through this stuff, thinking what your alternatives might be. And obviously I'm partial to this approach, but I think there's very few firms out there like Mattern who can truly take an unbiased approach to it and just say, this is what you have, and this is what your choices are. We're not selling any of that software, right? We're not doing that outsourcing services, but we can manage that process. And there's very few firms who can really be your partner in that. And I think firms like Mattern are pretty rare in the legal space. So, so I'll give you that plug, Rob. It's
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
I'll mail you that check. Cory, anything you want to wrap up with?
I think we just got a question about integrating AI solutions, and I think that is a piece that we didn't really cover today, but that is part of our recommendations, is looking at the software you currently have in place. If you're using the basic Microsoft Office suite and we're recommending you create a document processing department, we're definitely going to look at tools that are going to make that process more efficient rather than just having specialized people doing it. We're going to look at softwares that can make those processes more efficient as well. So I think getting that full picture of not only what your staff is doing, what they could be doing differently, who could be doing it instead of your on-site LAs that are bogged down with other tasks and looking to retire in the next few years, as well as looking at technology solutions that are going to improve your firm as well, is part of our report.
Okay. Well, I tell you, that concludes our time today. Thank you very much. A lot of great questions. If we didn't get to yours, we will follow up with you on those. And a recording of this will be available. But again, thank you very much. Bill, good job. Cory, good job. And have a great afternoon. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.